All right, I call the meeting of the third annual Inspector General Quality Assurance Review Committee to order. I'm John Benz, the chairman, Mr. Jim Letton,
Morning.
Mr. Duke McConnell. And I'd like to welcome everybody who's here. I think most everybody here is from the IG's office, with the exception of maybe Jerry, huh?
Yeah, pretty much.
Preaching to the choir today, right?
Yeah, we're preaching to the choir. Well, we are promulgating our report today. Everybody can get a copy of it at the front bar there, the desk. It is fairly complete. We reviewed the Inspector General's reports. We've gone over the various reports that he issued last year, and we have reviewed them. And we have met with the Inspector General and talked with him. We've posed questions to him, which he has answered. And I'd like to point out to everyone, including the public who may hear this, that the Inspector General has been most cooperative with our committee. There's nothing that we haven't asked him that he hasn't responded to, he and his personnel. The one thing that we did kind of kick around on our committee that was a problem, and it's not necessarily with the Inspector General, is the fact that he has a third function in his office, that of inspections and performance. And thus that third function is mandated by the Jefferson Parish Charter. And thus far, he has not been given the funds or the means to carry out that third function. We noted it in our report last year, and we noted again in our report this year that that has not been carried out. And I can read from our recommendation. It says the committee here notes that while not our function is not to sponsor legislation or request funding, we do assess that the OIG's compliance with the parish charter and its stated mission, as well as the Inspector General's assessment of his office capabilities and requirements. It is therefore essential to note that because of the Jefferson Parish Charter is an imperative mandating that the parish shall provide funding for the OIG program, the only way to comply and solve the existing problem and challenges to the OIG mission fulfillment is for that office to receive adequate resources, which the IG says it does not have. Therefore, we recommend that the Parish Council, the administration work together in consultation with the Inspector General to meet the requirements of the Parish Charter. To successfully accomplish this, the Inspector General asserts that the office needs resources to increase the Office of Inspector General's FTEs to support a meaningful staffed inspection and performance review function, increase the OIG FTEs to support at least one additional investigator, auditor, analyst, and increase the salaries and benefits for all existing OIG employees in order to enhance retention and localized parity. That is a strong recommendation of our committee. And in conclusion, let me read our conclusion. For the third consecutive year of the committee's review, Inspector General David McClintock and his staff of professionals were at all times accessible, responsible, candid, clear, helpful, and eager to provide whatever information we requested in order to make our third review as complete, accurate, and effective as possible. More importantly and revealingly, the representatives of the IG and his Office of Outstanding Professionals was once again amply demonstrated by his continued availability to respond to any questions at any time, despite the challenges of the COVID-19 crisis. As citizens of Jefferson Parish, we, the members of the Quality Assurance Review Committee, have an interest shared with all those who live and work here in parish government, which is honest, efficient, transparent, and responsive to the needs of all. The Office of Inspector General continues to deliver accountability and oversight of government functions in positive, constructive ways by operating fairly and without political or personal agendas, thus maintaining productive dialogues with all branches and which it interacts. Moreover, it does so while maintaining adequate political, economic, social, personal, and other distance and objectivity to enable it to effectively demand accountability and point out shortcomings in the parish government components and processes in need of repair whenever necessary. We remain grateful for and humbled by the honor and privilege to have the trust of the parish and citizens we serve in this role, and we thank the Inspector General, David McClintock, and his outstanding team for their work, cooperation, and dedicated public service. We commend them, offer our gratitude to Inspector General McClintock and his entire staff for a job well done in service to us all. I'd also like to personally thank my committee members, Mr. Letton and Mr. McConnell, for their work. Mr. Letton is essentially have become our secretary. He drafts our thoughts and puts them on paper, and he's done an excellent job with regard to that. With that, if y'all have any comments, Mr. McConnell?
David, I would ask you to clarify a little bit. From my discussion with you, even though you only have two of the functions set up to do, you do a portion of that third function during your normal activities. Is that correct?
I think it's fair to say that we try to incorporate more out of necessity the implementation of those elements, because there are some skill sets that come with evaluations that we do try to implement. But that's using the skill sets from an inspections and performance review ideology within an audit or within an investigation is a very different thing than having the function laid out, having policies and procedures to guide it, and professionals that have a professional career in the evaluation space. So the answer is yes, and with I think the catch that it is not replicative of a full-time evaluations function.
Right.
If
So
that makes any
like if you do an audit of a department, you're going to look at how they're performing. So you're going to do some of that in connection with the audit, not as a separate review.
Right. I think one of the things that you hear, Mr. McConnell, when you hear about a true inspections and evaluations section, is the use of surveys in a way that audit would never do. Surveying the other people connected with that function, the performance as it's perceived, inside, outside, different elements of it. So we may scratch the surface of those skill sets, but we're really not reaping the benefit of a function that is dedicated to that. But yes, when we have to, we do our best to do it.
The only other thing I'd like to say is, we appreciate the work that your staff does. We know it's not an easy job. I've said before, when you show up to review, do an investigation, people aren't happy to see you. They don't throw a party for you. So it's a hard job. Sometimes it's hard to get the cooperation. Sometimes it's not. So we understand it's a hard job to do, and we appreciate what y'all do.
And I think I can say collectively that we appreciate the party is often thrown when we leave. But yeah, let me say, while I have the mic for a minute, an awful lot of positive words and sentiment was received as a result of your report. And as I've stated before, but I want to state publicly, that is all these folks behind me that are responsible for that. I try my best to get out of the way. We may or may not always agree on that. But it truly is an amazing job this office performs with the resources that we have. I mean, we're essentially 9 people plus me, and we perform way above our level in the industry. The quality of the products that these folks are able to put out, the amount of the products we're able to put out is, to use a very old and played line, punches above its weight in a lot of ways, and that is these folks' skill set that's responsible for that. I also heard you, Commissioner Benz, or Committee Member Benz, Chair Benz, sorry, state that it was a privilege to work with us. The privilege was all ours. I've stated before, and again want to state for the record and anyone listening, we really get very few opportunities for feedback from people who understand the environment that we live in. And you 3 do understand this beautifully, and it has been refined over the last 3 years. So we very much value the feedback. I look forward to engaging with this committee every year. Part of what I think is responsible for the success of this department in a very difficult environment is our ability to understand when to adapt. And you can't adapt unless you learn. And the Quality Assurance Review Committee has been something that we've been able to learn from. It's been a process we've been able to learn from, and I'm thankful for that. And if I can just, from one last piece, just want to touch a little bit on the funding. 3 main elements that the Quality Assurance Review ferreted out very clearly, which you have a habit of doing, was really simple. In order to do an inspections performance review function correctly, it requires additional funding. But additional funding is a question that also impacts capacity. And capacity is something that you can only address through additional resources, in my understanding of capacity. You can take your best hand-picked team in the world, and I'm not so sure I'd change a single person, and throw 10 more projects at them. They're only going to be able to do what they can do. Those 10 projects aren't going to get done just because you throw it at them. It's going to come with the addition of capacity, and capacity is only going to come with funding. So there was a line in the report and a word that stuck with me, and that was the paucity of resources. And it is absolutely true. With the resources that we have, I again believe we do an exceptional job. If the parish wants us to execute on our charter mandates, it's going to require additional resources. The addition of additional resources, regardless of the methodology that's used to achieve that, is going to require commitment from the administration and the council. This is not a lift that is likely to be made by this office by itself. And I think you recognize that through your recommendation. And for that, I'm very thankful because, again, it's not a place you can land in unless you understand our environment, and you folks have done that well. So I don't want to monopolize, but thank you for the opportunity to get those few pieces out there, and thank you again for our opportunity to work with you again this year.
Thank you. And I like to wait till the end because when my 2 brethren get to make their observations, I have very little left to say. Because these guys are way smarter than I am, and it's an honor and pleasure to serve with Duke McConnell and also with John Bentz, going on 3 years now. And first of all, let me say that, and I think maybe it's worth saying, I think John touched on it a little bit, Mr. Inspector General, and that is, the resource piece is important. One of the things that, and I probably can't say this enough, is that while we recognize that more resources are necessary, we really recognizing and being sensitive to, thanks to these men here, being sensitive to the separation of powers, being sensitive to the fact that, we have executive branch, legislative, judicial, whatever, and we don't want to overstep those bounds, and especially since our mission is simply to review the progress and the quality of your office and your work, which is outstanding, and then to make whatever suggestions might be appropriate. We can recognize that resources are necessary, but we shouldn't and we can't and we didn't say where they need to come from, how they need to get there. So we had to straddle that, as it were, But again, recognizing that resources are so important to your office being able to conduct its mission. The best way to hurt and hobble a great Inspector General's office, wherever it exists, on the federal level, state level, local, parish, county, you name it level, is to strangle it, okay? Nobody's doing that. I'm impressed with this parish, with the leadership in this parish, and certainly with you guys. But again, I think I feel very good about the fact that listening, paying attention to you, looking what you all have done and what you're capable of, your incredible team, to simply acknowledge that, yes, that third function is called for. It's not an opinion. It's called for by the charter. And yes, it's going to require additional resources to do it. That mission in terms of finding where those resources are coming from, whether it's the council or the executive branch or whatever, is up to you guys. Mm-hmm. That said, I do want to say, again, we're grateful to have the trust of the parish, to have the trust of you and your great office. I'm not just here to pat people on the back, because we're not, we're not afraid to make any suggestions or criticisms if necessary, but that criticisms have not been necessary, because you and your team that I'm looking at right here, you've been absolutely tremendous. What I believe is one of the great formulas, and I've known you for a long time, one of the critical formulas for an Inspector General's office, which occupies a very special place in government, that is not in the normal chain of command of any flow chart, but is kind of over to the side and operates in kind of a sui generis sort of a way, in a very perilous sometimes sort of a way, in a way that is free from, and should be free from, political and partisan and governmental influence. One of the main things, I think perhaps the main factor that is going to allow any Inspector General's office, and I think especially to function efficiently and to function as it should, and that has been a hallmark of yours, has been to do so without any political affiliation, ideology, dogma, theory, or opinions or positions affecting what you do, affecting how you look at problems or potential problems, affecting how you conduct investigations, affecting which investigations you conduct, and certainly affecting the outcomes of those investigations. I haven't seen it here. I love these two men that I work with because they are committed, and we have not had, I don't know what political parties they belong to, don't want to know, don't care, or you or any of your people either, because it's not a factor, and it can't and shouldn't be in honest government. Politics needs to serve government, not the reverse. And I will tell you that I am so impressed with this parish government, and certainly, especially here today with your office, as you've operated consistently. It's the formula for your success, and you're being a model, I think, for other Inspector General's offices, is not only your absolute competence and dedication, which is beyond question, which is superb, it's fabulous, but the fact that you all have kept it completely apolitical, and that is probably the secret sauce, for whatever that's worth, in terms of no matter how good you are, making sure that you're going to be absolutely effective. It is just too bad that we don't have a room full of citizens here, a room full of members of the press, to see exactly why and how your office functions as well as it does. But that's okay, because you do, and that should be evident every day out there. And so I just got to get on my soapbox. I've seen politics, partisan politics, threaten to destroy government in so many places. It's got its place in government, not in these functions. And so thank you for making the parish that I live in and that we live in a place that we can be proud of. And I want to thank our parish president, our councilman, really all the people who serve us, because I'm very, very proud of what I'm seeing out there.
You're very very clear on that. I couldn't agree more. It is a team sport, and it includes the entire parish. And in the grand scheme of things, we have a really, really functional, well-functioning parish from top to bottom. And as far as the compliments made regarding staying out of the mud, as I put it. No higher compliment can be rendered on an Inspector General's office than to do your job without all of that extraneous influence. So thank you, and again, that's reflective of the group. So I, again, appreciate the report, the conversation, the hours of conversation that went into the report. Thank you very much on behalf of the entire Inspector General's office, and I think I can fairly say the Ethics and Compliance Commission as well.
Well, we're lucky to have you guys. Thank you all.
Want to say anything?
Anybody else from the audience wants to, Jerry, you want to make a?
I do. Jerry Sullivan on behalf of the Ethics and Compliance Commission. Unfortunately, the commission members aren't here. They're all out of town, but I just want to say thank you so much. The commission, like you, serves at the appointment of the administration after nominations are submitted by the various institutions of higher learning in the region. They serve without compensation. At every monthly meeting, the commission not only reviews the reports that the Inspector General issues, but they probe them. Sometimes I'm sure the office would rather we not probe them as careful as we do, but we want to make sure the product is as good as it can be. And we have questions, and we ask those hard questions, and surprisingly, we have phenomenal responses back from the staff and from Ms. McClintock when we ask the questions. And sometimes the questions are very detail-oriented regarding the data that they've assembled. They provide that data. We appreciate your efforts more than you can imagine. You are essential in the role you serve to provide a feedback in conjunction with a peer review that's every 3 years on a national basis to ensure that the commission gets objective views as to how the Inspector General does and how his office does. And you are integral in that. And we thank you on behalf of the commission very much.
Well, thank you for your trust and for everything you do for us, and we appreciate it. John? Mr.
Anyone
Chief?
else have from the public? All you members of the Inspector General's office, this is your chance to get up and maybe complain about David. If we have no further comments, I declare the meeting adjourned.
Thank you, sir.